Alright, question 251, stress on the pedestal jaws. Is the stress on the pedestal jaw the same as the crank pin for the either the core of the engine running ahead of the under steam? They think it's greater when the crank pin is on the top quarter, am I right? Yes, suppose you had an engine with a wheel 60 inches in the diameter, cylinder 20 inches the diameter, choke 24 inches. This would place the center of the crank pin at 12 inches with the center of the axle of the air with the 20-inch piston with a 314.16 square of the inch of it would have the 100 pound of the steam pressure for the cylinder with the pin, when the pin in the top of the quarter would have the pull of the 31.416 of the pound of the crank pin. Now looking at the wheel with the wood to the left of the wheel to have the point of the contact rail with the fulcrum, the main axle, the load of the wave that can be moved to be moved, the pin of the power, and this gives the lever of the second class in which A is equal to 12 inches, B is equal to 30 inches. Power is applied at P equals little p equals P times little b plus A over B divided by W. The stress put on the weight of the pedestal of the position, which 43.982 pounds within the pin of the bottom of the quarter. We have the lever third class of A 12 inches, B 18 inches. We have the B times P times little b, and A little a times plus B equals W of the stress on the pedestal when cranking. Alright, pins in the bottom of the quarter in which for the 18,849 pounds when in position. Please note the illustrations. This shows the stress of the pedestal jaws. Alright, question 252. Horsepower of the Vulcan compound locomotives. What is the horsepower of the Vulcan compound considered with the cylinders 19 and 32 inches by 32 inches by the speed of 30 miles per hour? The MEP is 2,225 pounds and the wheels are 57 inches in diameter. Alright, answer. We interfere with the boiler pressure of 225 pounds that would make you wish you used the information on the other side. The following formula is used to find the tractive power of the Vulcan four-cylinder compound locomotive differential speed C squared times S times 2 to 3P over D plus 2 squared times S times 1/4 P divided by T. C is the diameter of the high-pressure cylinder, as little c is the diameter of the low-pressure cylinder in inches, S is the stroke of the piston in inches, P is the boiler pressure in pounds, D is the diameter of the driving wheels, T is the traction power, and the tractive power multiplied by the speed in miles per hour divided by 375 gives the horsepower. The question 253, slip or link block. What is the exact cause of the slip of the link block? Does it increase the travel of the valve? Answer. The exact cause of the slipping of the link block due to the length of the block is being securely fastened to the bottom of the rocker arm. Therefore, the block must move on the transverse rocker arm. The action and eccentric route of the linking force move the vertical motion of certain parts of the stroke, which cause the slip of the link to slip on the block. When one eccentric of the traveling forward, the other backward. The listening link must move with the block does not happen, so the slip of the longer cut off the greater slip. Alright, question 254, broken Alec bolt of the module engine. What should be done in case of an Alec bolt broke on the module? Answer, block up between the truck axle and the front end of the loco along the equalizer. Place the truck brass on the axle and allow the end of the equalizer to rest on it. Oil the brass well, and you can get in it without trouble. Question 255, where are the guide bars? When the engine is running with the working steam, what part of the guides at the top of the bottom does the crosshead bear against the, and why does the bottom guide wear it so much faster than the top one on all railroad engines? Your answer, when an engine with the running of the forward with the top of the guide with the wheel wear with the motion with more of the bottom of the guide with the engine of the forward end of the cylinder seam of the mid of the pin pass with the center of the steam pushing with the piston back, exerting the pressure of the forward end of the main rod. The back end of the main rod below the center of the crosshead is forced upward against the bottom of the top guide. When the piston leaves the back end of the cylinder steam of the cylinder, the pulling of the rod forward with the angle of the pin leaves the center of the pull of the pin leaves the crosshead and causes it to wear over the bottom of the top of the guide. But this always pushes the belt pulling of the rod with this back into the rod flow of the crank pin circle is also on the angle. The zeppelin passing the center of the holding the crosshead up the wall, working with the steam running forward, pushing it into when the running backward. If the engine wears the aim must be bottom of the guides where running ahead with this improper lubrication with the bottom of the guides crosshead. The else with the guide with the not in line with the road engines running ahead that do not wear bottom guides most. Alright, question 256, indicator cars. What are the four principles of points for the indicator when indicating an engine? Answer, if you mean the four principal points for the indicator car, the emission for the cutoff, the expansion for the release, and exhaust, the potential for the indicator held in the paper land, the indicator drum of the communication between the cylinder indicator is shut off both of the side of the indicator piston is exposed, but the atmosphere of the line is made with the paper on the paper. They have no connection with the condition existing with the cylinder. This is forms of the 9 from the nut that forms the line from which all the pressure is determined. Now, before taking the car's well to allow the piston indicator to move the few strokes before the applying with the pencil of the paper to warm over the pipe of the leading to the cylinder of the indicator, thus with the pencil is applied to indicate the emission line, which will over the pressure of the cylinder until the pencil begins to fail. Pencil begins to fall. The valve closed with the port with the emission of the steam, the form of the cutoff, and the show of the valve, the close with the port emission as the steam expands, the volume pressure decrease with the drop of the pencil, showing the drop of the decrease, and the pressure indicates the expansion of the steam of the cylinder until the port open and with the release of the exhaust. Then the pencil falls until the cylinder piston reaches the end of the stroke. As this piston now moves forward, and the steam does not get all get out of the cylinder from the piston, which pushes it out. The line made with the pencil would indicate the pressure exhaust side of the piston would enclose, which is closed by the back pressure with the measure for the distance above the line first made with the car on the card. This line continues until the valve of the closed with the exhaust when the line covered the curve upwards, showing the steam that did not get all the cylinder and failed to escape through the exhaust port with the compressed end cylinder. Therefore, the car showing the expansion of the cutoff, expansion of the release of the compression. 5 important points. Further following and for fuller information from the indicator practice to see the Art of Railroading Volume 2, published in the Railway Publication Society, Chicago 2. Alright, question 257. The engine traveling under and over. What is meant with the engine traveling under and over? The answer is the direction which the engine runs, when you say locomotive is running ahead of the back of the readily understood with the forward and backward motion, essential for the governing level of the boat in the stationary, but not getting the very definite idea with the direction of the engine with the running and the corresponding with the eccentric plate for the crank of the dead center and the ear for the cylinder. When the engine starts with the pin, the downward under the axle from first the engine is running under the boat before, but if it starts the opposite direction, give it the other goes over the axle. If it runs over the locomotive is running ahead is running under the back, heading up to the running over. Alright, question 258. Effect of the decreased valve travel. What is the effect of the engine and travel the valve with the decrease? The effect of the shortening of the travel the valve to increase the load of the lead of the bolt, the steam of the exhaust, the decrease of the parting of the opening of the emission steam of the cylinder produced the early cutoff, the increase of the expansion. This is called the reduction of the port of the opening and for the exhaust steam to escape the cylinder and increase the compression. Question 259. Long and short connected engines. What are the difference between the long and short connected engine? And the answer for the difference of the length of the connection of the main rod of the rod to communicate with the pressure of the piston, with the crank pan, the driving wheel, with the cranks of the axles. Question 260. Uptake in the boilers. What is meant by the uptake of the boiler? The apply of what is known as the area of the uptake of the funnel will determine the size of the funnel with the condition for the considered, but the first question refers to marine practices. Rather than locomotive, means that the area of the funnel is so that the grade is determined by the result based on the best practice. The area usually 1/5 of the 1/8 of the grade, 1/5 of the 1/6 of the grade, or in the top of the funnel is about 40 feet above the grade. Question 261. A jet stream. What is a jet stream? Answer the volume of the steam escaping through the nozzle pipe of which is escaping and projected through the passage funnel with opening of the mixture of air with the gas of liquid through the incident of the current, inducing current. A blower on the locomotive of the jet stream is induced with the current of the gases and air through the sack of the causing the fire. Our question 262. Travel the value when steam lap of the port with the opening of the dome. When the steam lap of the port opening dome must be removed, the travel the answer the valve opening of the steam port and fold width, but the travel of the valve must be twice the width of the steam port of the lap valve. Examples: width of the steam port 1 1/4 inch, lap of the valve with 1 inch, and 1 1/4 inch plus 1 is equal to 2 1/4 inch, and 2 inches, and 2 1/4 inch by 2 equals 4 1/2 inches. The answer: the 4 1/2 inches. The value over the travel of the width to travel the edge of the bridge, but you can take over the 1/2 of the width of the bridge multiplied by 2, add to the above, and you will have the value traveled equal to the width of the steam port plus for the lap of the plus for the 1/2 of the width over the bridge multiplied by 2. Alright, question 263. Setting out the packing rings. And how should the packing rings be set out? If the engine is equipped with the spring cylinder packaging, remove the cylinder head and the follower. Use the caliper stick or a stick if you do not have them to keep the position of the central cylinder. Loosen the jam nuts, putting the tension with the spring holding the packing rings out against the cylinder wall, with adjusting the caliper, measuring again and knowing that the piston is the center of the cylinder before when the jamming the nuts and tighten. The proper adjustment depends entirely on the judgment. If the packing is set out tight, it will absorb the power of the engine, may ruin both the packing and the packing should be tight to prevent the escape of the steam path of the packing rings, which would result in the waste of the steam and lost pressure. If the snapping rings used should be returned with a ring with about 3/16 of an inch of the larger for the diameter of the cylinder was applied. When applied, if worn may be peened out with a hammer to fit the cylinder. Even the applying of the new ring should be cornered sharp with some rings where the sharp corners should be rounded off to prevent the sharp edge from cutting the cylinder walls. Question 264. Action with injectors. What makes an injector lift water? With the lifting injector, would the injector really lift the water? The steam jet with the primary allow for the steam to flow with the overflow of the pipe with the force of the air to the pipe of the injector, producing the partial vacuum of the injector with warm relief, and the connection should be tight with the air force with the out of the injector atmospheric pressure on the top of the water of the tank of the force of the water up into the feed pipe into the injector. This explains why the injector work better with the sea level than on mountains. At high altitudes, when the air is light, there is less atmospheric pressure to force the water into the injector. Question 265. Broken pony truck center pin and long equalizer. In the case of the broken pony truck center pin, long equalizer on any engine of the two wheel of the forward truck what would you do? Answer. Alec bolt with a long truck with the equalizer broken rave of the front end of the engine above the normal position. This will take the tension off of the front end of the driving the box spring with now jack up the front end of the equalizer, place the block on the hardwood and truck race over the top of the truck axle will allow the end of the equalizer to rest on it. If it kept well oiled where the brass drive of the axle will give it no trouble to shift the equalizer brake with between the front valve from the end of the so you can not use the brass journal with the jack up the place for the tie with the short piece of the rail across the top of the frames in the front of the cylinder chain with the broken and equalizer. This would hold the front end of the equalizer solid, but will give the use of the front driving the springs. Run carefully with the engine block in the manner. Alright, question 266. Working steam expansively. After getting the train started, which should you hook the reverse lever towards the center? Answer. You may work with the engine more economically before looking lever towards the center of the steam port, but the will remain open during the portion of the stroke. Only the when the valve closes the port of the steam compartment, the cylinder power forces the piston of the completion of the stroke with an expansive force energy. The term working steam expansively less with the steam is required with the boiler fill the cylinder at the short cutoff when the port remains for the during the full length of the stroke of the piston. If you can do this with working with less steam, you will use less coal. Question 267. Lead of the valve. What is meant by the lead of the valve? Answering the opening of the steam port when the piston is beginning with the stroke. Alright, question 268. Angularity and main rod. In talking about the angularity of the main rod, A seems to overcome the slip of the length of the B, will also overcome the length of the saddle being set back of the center of the block. If the length of the saddle being placed and back in the center of the overcome and how if the slip of the link does please state whether they have both something to do with it, and if only one with one, which one? Enter the link block is circularly fastened at the bottom of the rocker arm. Most of the move of the arc transverse with the arm, no action with the eccentric rod with the link force with the move with the slightly vertical motion with the center plate of the center part of the stroke, which causes the link to stop the slip of the link of the block of the slip link bling out block, the slip link on the block of the greatest with the low gear of the dimension of the block of the move toward the center of the link back setting link saddle pin point of the suppression. Also the effect of the equal the length of the eccentric rod during the portion of the stroke, thereby equalizing the valve travel that has most efficient equalization of the emission of the cutoff to overcoming the angularity of the main rod, slipping the length of the block, and it will require little study to understand the motion of the link at each end, but they move the motion of the pendulum from the point of the suspension saddle pin with the motion of the link of the link block. If you can trust yourself to ride on the brake beam while a careful man handles the engine for a few revolutions, it will assist making this clear. Question 269. Position for the eccentric. What should be the position for the eccentric when the direct motion and the piston valve inside the emission? Answer. With the valve arm and the link arm the same length, the eccentric should be at the right angle to the pin and the advance door of the pin and the mount with the lap of the lead with the valve. The eccentric should be in the same position in the direct motion, outside emission, and word of use. Alright, question 270. Direct and indirect engines. And I wish to ask about the Erie engines that run into our terminal. Whether these engines are the direct or indirect, whether to describe the eccentric are played for the axle direct position, visa forward motion, eccentric lead with the pin with 90 degrees, play for the angle of advance. Other eccentrics have the relative position to make the engine direct. Have the top of the bottom rocket arm, the U of the piston valve that is situated with the outside of the frame. Have the inside emission with the valve stem with the main stem with the prop moving together. Also in the entire stroke, indicating the direct engine with the engines the direct indirect. Answer. You evidently mistaken. Yes, you are evidently mistaken. You say that the engines have the inside emission, the valve that move the same direction of the piston with the beginning of the stroke, which indicate the outside emission. This the valves emission with the valves. With the top and the bottom of the rock arm would be in the direct of the motion with the valve would move in the opposite direction to the eccentric rod. Therefore, the eccentric should be set with a right angle to the pin advance door of the pin of the mount and the lap of the lead, same as the plain side of the valve was used. Question 271. Crosshead gib on the top of the single bar guide. Explain well the gib on the crosshead on the top of the single bar guide of the Mogel engine is left loose, and what effect will it have that might be tight if made tight to crosshead. The gib's crosshead can be made tight, providing that it will permit the free movement of the guide bar, which then may not tight, usually due to wear. With the type that use of crosshead, it's difficult to keep them tight. They wear rapidly and account with the horizontal vertical motion with the crosshead. Question 272. Friction. What reduces the friction? What would the result of the excessive friction? Friction of the resistance of the body means with the surface of the which would remove the polishing, smoothing of the lubricating of the surface of the result of the effect of the friction meet with the which expands the journal, increase the pressure between the journal and its bearing, further increase the friction, give the trouble to hot pins, journals, and burn brasses, etc. Question 237. 273. Question 273. Lubrication. What is the lubrication object? And its object. Lubrication is a method introducing lubrication, either liquid or solid, between the journal and its bearings, between the two wearing surfaces of the object, to keep the surface with the two metal of the bearings apart, with the separating of the film of the lubricant, thereby reducing the amount of friction. Question 274. Carrying for the hot bearings of the road. In the manner of would you carry the hot bearings on the road? What kind of oil should be used for the hot bearings? Answer. When the bearing gets hot, they increase the oil supply, but if possible, be sure of the oil reach of the bearing an inch of the truck with the intention of driving. The journal would examine the first stop. If the time would allow a packet if necessary, the driving box was hot and due to the wedge for the too tight would pull the wedge down. If the eccentric hot would be kept the lever hooked up with the nearest center possible to use the valve oil with the strap. If the strap is too tight with the eccentric would loosen the bolts of the in the linear first stop of the forward motion. Eccentric heating of the however the lever would be applied with the quadrant. Good share of the working taking place with the motion. Eccentric if it's not good practice to drop the lever with the forward motion. Eccentric of the running hot. To increase the work of the forward motion, care for the attention for the bearing, all preventing the great deal of the trouble of doing the hot spots. This is where the ounce of the prevention worth a pound of the cure. The use of the engine oil on all the bearings, but if the bearing is very hot, the valve oil should be used when the box is reported with the terminal to be packed with the sponging that has been saturated with valve oil. They should be removed. The oil holes cleaned out, especially in cold weather. Alright, question 275. Duties of completion of the trip. The completion of the trip, what is necessary? A thorough inspection of the locomotive with the fire should be burned down, and sufficient water with the boiler if necessary. Boiling holster working the injector while the pit or in the house. If the look at the fire with the box ground sheet with the flues there being an inspection for the strike with the ground, with examine all the parts of the engine tendering and give them the complete the round. Look for the loose nuts, the wedge bolts, cracked leaves, the spring defects for the spring hand, the spring or in the spring ring. Note with the temperature, but all the journal bearings. Locate the look at the broken and lost cellar bolts of the driving engine truck box. Examine the flange wheel. See if the pilot is too low. Uncoupling leverage grab irons, etc. should be received. The inspection shut off the feed of the guide cup to see that all the cutter pins are in place. Figure the inspector any of the ones else can not find any of the defects that should that not have unlocated. The writer report necessary so that the roundhouse men can readily locate need repairs. All right. For conveniency,